Laura and I got married right after high school. I was determined and hardworking, and shortly after graduating, I started a small HVAC business. Within 2 years, I had 5 employees and the business was thriving. 15 years later, I was managing a team of 30 dedicated employees, including the invaluable Gary, who proved to be a remarkable asset to the company. Even though he didn't have an HVAC certificate or any prior experience, Gary's passion, strong work ethic, and fantastic rapport with the team made him an exceptional manager for our Greensboro operations. Recognizing his outstanding contributions, I promoted him, offering a major increase in pay and the possibility of future ownership in the company. Our professional relationship flourished into a genuine friendship, and we enjoyed working together. Over the years, I expanded the business from Greensboro to Raleigh, establishing it as the premier HVAC companies in Piedmont, North Carolina. Our services were in high demand. Our revenue and profits soared, strengthening the company's position in both markets. Because we were now doing so well financially, we decided to purchase our dream home. It was in a posh upscale neighborhood with a massive swimming pool, a huge patio, and a large grilling area. Today, Laura and her girlfriends have gathered at our house for the weekend. As they arrived, I was told to make myself scarce, as they were on a mission to have a blast without the men. And I had no problem with her request because I was really looking forward to my weekend with the guys. As I left the ladies, I couldn't help but think that I am the luckiest man in the world to have Laura and her girls in my life. Yeah, they might drive us husbands crazy at times, but deep down, we knew they were the spice that added flavor to our otherwise ordinary days. We had planned out our trip to the hunting reserve. We planned to leave at around 5 p.m. to reach our destination by 8 p.m. As we gathered our gear and packed up the car, I suddenly realized that I had forgotten my bag of shells, so I told the guys that I needed to go back to the house to get them before we took off. I jumped in my car and drove back to my house. I parked behind all the ladies' cars, walked to the side door, and quietly made my way down to the workshop. Trying to remain quiet, I made my way over to the bench and noticed that I could hear the woman chatting. They were already drunk as they were giggling and having fun. They were sitting on the deck at the side of the house. Now, I normally wouldn't give a flip about their conversion, but when I heard my wife talking about me in bed, my attention perked up. I don't know why, but I thought that I should record this part of the conversation and tease her with it when I got back, so I turned on the recording app on my iPhone. The next few minutes ruined my fishing trip and turned my world upside down. Laura, with her mischievous laugh, didn't shy away from dishing out the details about her relationship with me. She told the girls how great I was with my tongue and that I never failed to satisfy her after all these years. She continued though by saying, "But it's true what they say. After years of marriage, things might not be as wild as they once were, but hey, it happens to the best of us." Then, out of nowhere, one of the girls dropped $1 million question. "Is that why you did it with Gary?" Damn it. Did I just hear what I thought I heard? Did one of the girls just say that Laura did something with Gary, our Gary? My mind raced, trying to process what I had just heard. Gary, who I trusted and considered a friend, had been smashing my wife. Next, I heard Laura say, "Jeff and I have a good sex life, and he's always satisfied me in that way. I love him and would never intentionally have started anything with Gary. It kind of just happened." Come on, Laura, you cheated on Jeff. You can't be that satisfied with your marriage. No, you don't understand. My love for Jeff is everything. He's not just my man. He's my home, my rest, my heart, and my safe place. And yes, he satisfies me. I love him dearly. This stupid thing with Gary was just a big mistake. But you said Gary was a great lover, so we assume you had sex with him. We don't get it. Tell us the whole story. Girls, anything I tell you has to stay here. The guys would kill Gary, and my husband would kick me to the curb if he found out I would never hurt him that way. He's such a great man, but he would never understand. Do you promise to keep this just between us girls? I didn't hear anything, but I assumed they all nodded their heads in agreement. Okay, you can't repeat any of this, but after Susan dumped Gary last month, he was distraught. He was completely shocked. He was about to ask her to marry him. That afternoon when I saw him at the restaurant, we sat together, and he opened up to me and told me the entire story. Girls, he cried. This big strong stud was crying, and my heart went out to him. I felt so bad for him, so I sat with him until he calmed down. He was so depressed and upset I felt almost a motherly need to take care of him. Yes, you're old enough to be his mother. Give us a break, Laura. You had a sexual need to take care of him, not a motherly need. Well, as it turned out, you're right. But at the time, sex had not crossed my mind. Anyway, he walked me to my car and thanked me for being a good friend. I just smiled and gave him a friendly kiss. Before I could move away from him, he pulled me close and gave me the hottest kiss I can remember. It's been years since I've been kissed like that. After the kiss, he took my hand and led me to his truck. I don't know why I let him do this. I felt like I was spellbound. Anyway, we sat in the back of his truck and made out like high school sweethearts for the next few minutes, and that's when he told me he always found me so sexy and fantasized about being with me. I have to admit that I was overwhelmed and flushed from his compliments, but I can't explain what I did next. I felt his manhood and it was huge and visible under his jeans. I have to admit, I didn't think about Jeff or our family at all then. As if in a trance, I unbuckled his belt and lowered his pants. I was spellbound at the size. I ended up giving him my best work. He was so thankful and said he needed that after what he had been going through. Martin's wife, Suzette, spoke next. Well, that's hot. We never realized you had that in you. Me neither. I never thought about doing anything like that before, but it just kind of happened. That's when Scott's wife, Emily, chimed in. I think all of us girls dream of doing that, but it never happens. Good for you. I'm so jealous. Tell us what happened next. Well, after I came to my senses and I realized what I had done, I suddenly felt overcome with guilt. I knew what I did was wrong and that Jeff would never understand, so I had to make sure it never happened again. I told Gary this was a one-time thing, and we could never do anything like that again. Then I told him that Jeff was his friend, and he would feel betrayed by both of us if he found out. Gary agreed. He said it was just a moment of passion and would remain our secret forever. As I stood there, my heart torn between shock and pain, Suzette's words were the final dagger. Well then, how did you end up in bed with Gary? And why would you turn your husband into a simp? In a somber voice she spoke. No, please don't think that. Jeff's no simp. I just made another stupid mistake. I really messed up and should have known better. Gary called me to ask me to lunch, but I said no and told him that we really shouldn't be seen together. He said he was depressed and needed someone to talk to, and he felt as if I was the only one that understood what he was going through. Gary told me he'd make us lunch if I came over to his house for just an hour. That was when I made another colossal mistake by going to his house alone. We sat and talked as we ate the salads, along with another glass of wine. After an hour of small talk, he told me how moved he was by our last time together. He was standing next to me as he was about to take our dishes to the sink and kiss me again. This time it was one of those romantic, panty-dropping kisses we girls dream about. Long story short, we ended up in his bed for the entire afternoon. It wasn't romantic by any means, just raw copulation. I knew it was wrong, but it just happened. And to be honest, it was the best I had in years. Girls, I'd never felt anything like that before. I arrived so hard and screamed so loud, I was sure the neighbors heard us. After I showered and got dressed, I told him that this would never happen again. I told him he was a wonderful man and needed to find a woman his own age to love, and that as much as I enjoyed him, I wouldn't jeopardize my marriage. We both agreed, and that was the last time. So, you've never been with him again? Only those 2 times. Only those 2 times. I know it was wrong, but, like I said, it just happened. As she spoke, her voice quivered with emotion. Laura acknowledged that despite the guilt she carried, she couldn't help but reminisce about the intense passion she shared with Gary. She described how those memories had become a secret sanctuary she sought when making love to me. Laura told the ladies, I hate to admit it, but I use them when Jeff's making love to me. I know it's wrong, but I can't stop thinking of Gary and how he felt. I can't get him out of my head. I've never experienced what he gave me before or since then. Girls, Gary has ruined me, and even with all the guilt I carry, I still can't get him out of my head. Emily had been quiet but spoke up after Laura's admission. Laura, I'm so jealous. I love Scott as well, but I'd love to be with a young stud like Gary. Don't repeat this, but Scott's kind of small. I love him dearly, but I'd kill to try out a big one just once. I heard Suzette make a low moan as if the story was getting her hot. That's wild. And poor Jeff is clueless. He has no idea about Gary or that you fantasize about him. Oh, that's so wicked, Laura. But you better fix your head and forget about Gary. Jeff's not a stupid man, and you might slip up and hurt him. Don't worry about Jeff. I make sure he's taken care of. And trust me, he'll never know about this, and I'll never do it again, I swear. It was a mistake, and living with this guilt has been difficult. To be honest, along with the wine, finally telling someone the entire story is helping me. I couldn't help but feel as if the ladies were laughing at my expense. I was the sucker that purchased the big house, paid the bills, and allowed my wife to enjoy a luxurious life without having to work. Spa, country club, shopping, new big house, with her pool for entertainment, and a housekeeper, all on my dime. The sucker, the simp better known as the clueless husband. I couldn't believe what I had just heard. Tears streamed down my face. I knew I had to leave, to distance myself from the situation, at least for now. I picked up my fishing lure, box of shells along with the bottle of 46 that I bought for the guys, then made my way back to Martin's house. The guys were waiting for my return, oblivious to the turmoil raging inside me. I wanted to stick with the original plan, going away for the weekend and seeking solace in a place where I could be alone with my thoughts. But fate seemed to have a cruel sense of humor as I realized I would be spending those days with Gary, the very person who had been smashing my wife. The prospect of being around him only added to my anguish. I didn't know what to expect, and the uncertainty weighed on me. Would I be able to keep my emotions in check? Could I face him without beating the life out of him or revealing the devastation I felt inside? When I arrived, Martin was outside loading up his Range Rover. As I approached, he could tell there was something wrong. Jeff, what's wrong? We look like crap. What's going on? Sorry, Martin. I have a migraine coming on, and I just need to shut down for a while. Are you sure? Man, you look bad. Yeah, I'm used to dealing with this. Just let me sit in the front for the ride, and I'll shut my eyes, and I'm sure I'll be fine. Besides, there's no way I'll miss our annual trip. I need to get away. Of course, brother. No problem. Why don't you go inside and relax, and we'll finish packing. We'll leave in about 30 minutes. I'll come to get you when we're ready. Sure enough, 30 minutes later, I was in the front seat, and my buddy Martin took care of me. He took his wife's sleeping eye cover and a pair of his noise-canceling headphones and handed them to me as I sat in the passenger seat, as Gary and Scott sat in the back. For the next 2.5 hours, I was able to sit in peace and think about the train wreck I had just overheard. I thought back to all of our years together, how I worshipped Laura and felt blessed when she gave me Michael and Katie, our wonderful children. The mental images of Laura and Gary in action were all I could think about. The more I tried to stop, the more I saw the two of them going at it. She said it was only one time, and she felt guilty and would never do it again. I wanted to find a way to forgive her and get past that. But the killer for me was remembering those final words on how she thinks of Gary when we make love. As a red-blooded man, I can imagine any guy getting past that. Hell no, I believe that confession right there was what ended our marriage. I had no answers or ideas on what to do and must have fallen asleep because the last thing I remember is Martin shaking my shoulder, waking me up. Dude, are you okay? How are you feeling? He said, now at the fishing cabin. For the next 2 days, I was unusually quiet and used my migraine as an excuse. I continued to struggle with my feelings as I looked at my life, both past and future. It was difficult, but I knew I would survive. 2 days later, I found myself on a trail to the lake alone with Gary. Martin and Scott were going to meet us down at the boat dock. I found myself following Gary through the woods. As I followed him along the path, I heard Laura's words echo in my head, and suddenly I was full of rage. I noticed a 2x4 on the side of the path. Without thinking, I picked it up, looked at Gary about 20 feet in front of me, and suddenly charged forward, raising the board and bringing it down hard onto Gary's left shoulder, knocking Gary to the ground. Standing over at him, I was looking down at the man that blanked my wife. He was holding his shoulder as I yelled, "That's for blanking my wife." I then kicked him as hard as I could between his legs. I hit his jewels as hard as I could and watched him curl up wailing in pain until he blacked out. A few moments later I came back to my senses and moved Gary over to a tree and sat him up while he recovered. A few minutes later, he regained consciousness. What the hell, Jeff? Look, dimwit, I know all about you and Laura, and right now you're lucky you're still alive. Man, I'm sorry. It just happened. Jeff's face turned red with rage. Shut the hell up. You blanked her. End of the story. Don't talk to me for the rest of the trip, and you better not say one word to Laura about this. If you do, I promise you will live to regret it. I'm not sure what I plan to do with her, but I don't need you jacking that up as well. You've destroyed my 20-year marriage. Don't mess up my revenge as well. Jeff, she loves you. You can't divorce her. This is all my fault and I'm sorry. Please just take it out on me, not her. Jeff, I was hurting from Susan leaving me, and Laura was there for me. It just happened and she felt guilty after I pushed her. Man, you can't divorce her. She loves you. I kicked him in the jewels again and shouted. I said shut up. Just then Martin and Scott saw me kicking him again and ran over and pulled me away. Jeff, what are you doing? What's going on? Gary was quiet and held his jewels in pain. Martin helped Gary get up, and we went back to the cabin for the next hour. Gary was holding his shoulder, acting all teed off because I attacked him from behind, and how it wasn't a fair fight. I glared at him and told him to shut up, and then played the recording for everyone to hear. When the recording ended, Martin screamed at his nephew, "You freaking butthole! You betrayed our friend, and the man that gave you a job when you were down and out and took you into his trust. You blanked one of our wives, and had the nerve to come with us on this trip. And you're pissed off that Jeff hurt you. You should be thankful that we didn't dump your ass in the middle of the lake. We don't want to see or hear from you for the rest of this trip. Not one word. And you should be thankful you're still alive." Scott spoke up. "You know, guys, there's another problem with this recording. You heard what my wife and Suzette said, and how exciting it was. All of our wives were excited about Laura's cheating, and are keeping it a secret. I don't know about you, but I have a problem with that, and when I get back, Emily and I will be having a serious conversation." "Yeah, you're right, Scott. That was some bullcrap, and disrespectful to all of us." He turned to Gary, giving him a death stare, and said, "See what you've done, butthole. You've destroyed one marriage and possibly two others. Maybe we should dump you in the middle of the lake." Gary just looked down at the floor and remained silent. He finally realized how badly he screwed up. Jeff spoke. "Guys, I agree they are all involved, but please give me a few days before you do anything. I'll give you a copy of the recording, but I need to confront Laura before she knows what I've learned." Martin looked over at his nephew Gary. "You're a piece of crap. You will not speak to Laura or the other wives without our approval. If you warn Laura what's about to come down on her, we will make your life a living hell. Right now, if you disappeared, none of us would be upset. You're my nephew and family, which is the only reason I haven't beaten your ass and left you in those woods. You've hurt our friend and a good man. Just because you couldn't keep your girlfriend, you go after another man's wife. You're a piece of crap, and I'm embarrassed to admit you're my sister's kid. Not a word, do you understand?" Gary nodded. Nobody spoke to him again for the entire trip. As we drove back home, I thought about everything and wondered how Laura would have reacted if the roles were reversed. Deep down I loved Laura and probably could get over the one-time freak-off with Gary, but the thought of her dreaming of him while making love with me was too much. I decided to leave Laura's fate in her own hands. The plan was to talk about an affair, leading her to think it was me who had the affair, and see how she reacts and what she would do. If she forgave the one-off sex, then I would do the same for her and work things out. The fate of our marriage will be in her hands. My stomach was churning and my anger emerged as I pulled up into my driveway. It was time to face Laura, and I needed to keep my feelings in check and act normal, which was going to be one of the hardest things I've ever done. I got a warm welcome when I entered the house. Laura was dressed up and looking nice when she gave me a big hug and an excellent welcome home kiss, which I was going to miss if she made the wrong choice. I was still angry, but the smell of her perfume and the nice dinner she prepared helped calm me down. We had an excellent dinner, and somehow I kept it together and listened to her tell me about the last few days. It was still early when she took me up to the bedroom, saying she missed me and needed some loving. Obviously, she was keyed up and wanted some. Laura didn't waste time and had my pants down around my ankles a minute after we were on the bed. She was on her knees, and I tried hard to arrive. I didn't want to enter her because I knew she would be thinking of Gary. And no matter how much I loved her, I knew that this was something I would think about every time we made love. She knew I was getting close, so she stopped and pulled me on top of her, and for the first time in our relationship I was unable to perform. Laura looked up at me, hurt by my lack of motivation. "Jeff, what's wrong? You don't want me?" "Well," I said to myself, "it's showtime." I had my phone on the night table recording the audio so that there would not be any misunderstanding of what was said. "Laura, there's something I need to tell you. There's someone else, and I feel so bad that I just can't perform." Shocked, she looked up at me and asked, "What do you mean, there's someone else?" "I'm so sorry. It's only been a couple of times, but it was so great I just can't get it out of my head." She went off as I predicted. "You disgusting POS. You blank someone else and you can't stop thinking about how good she was." "Baby, it was only physical. I still love you," I said. "I can't believe this." "What do you mean you can't stop thinking about it?" "Well, to be honest, the arrivals were the best ever, and I can't get them out of my head, which is why I can't perform." I carefully repeated her own words from the recording. Was I being cruel and mean? Maybe, but in reality, I was the victim, not her. In an angry voice she yelled, "Damn you, pack your crap and get out. I'm not going to stay married to a cheater. You know my dad cheated on my mom, leaving her a broken woman. I will not let you do that to me. Now get out. I'm going to divorce your ass and make you pay for this. I've been a good wife. I gave you wonderful children, ran the household, made you dinner, and treated you with love, and this is how you repay me." I almost laughed at her demeanor and comments. She's not going to enjoy this in a few minutes, that's for sure. "Laura, it was just physical, and it was only those 2 times. Come on. It was just a one-time thing. Are you sure that you want a divorce over this?" "Yes, I want a divorce, and you're going to pay out of your hind end for this. I'm going to divorce you and take you for everything you're worth, you cheating POS." "Well, I didn't expect you to be so heartless and cruel. Like I said, there was no love. It was just physical, and only those 2 times. Is this really what you want? Are you sure? There's no forgiveness possible. Maybe we can go to counseling." I tried to save the marriage, but she was in fact making the decision to end it, and she didn't even know it. "No, we're done. I won't stay married to a cheater. Just pack some of your clothes and get out. Stay with Martin or get a hotel room, but I don't want to see you again. You'll hear from my attorney." I smiled. I just couldn't help myself. She had no idea that she had just done. She angrily yelled, "Why do you have that smirk on your face, butthole?" "Well, dear, I had a hard decision to make, but you just made it a lot easier." "What do you mean, a hard decision?" she asked. "Let me show you something. Get dressed and come with me." She was boiling, but she followed me down to my workshop. I had her stand next to the same window where I made the recording. I told her to stay there and not move until I returned. I went outside and synced the Bluetooth speaker with my iPhone, then returned to the workshop. She was still angry but now looked confused as I stood next to her and then hit play on the phone. My cheating wife was even more confused when she heard herself speaking, but continued to listen, and then the expression on her face changed to one of shock. When she heard the entire conversation, she broke down in tears and fell to her knees. The realization of what had just happened hit her hard. "Jeff, baby, I'm so sorry. How did you hear that?" she asked between sobs. "Well, I'm not sure why that matters, but I had to come back for some things I forgot to pack. I didn't want to disturb you girls, so I came down the back door to avoid your little party. That's when I heard you talking about me in bed. I recorded it because I was going to share it with you and tease you when I got back. But when you confessed to your affair with Gary, I stayed and recorded everything. Sweetheart, you heard me say it was just the one-off and only physical. You must know there's nothing between us. You have to forgive me. I'm so sorry. You weren't supposed to find out." Laura's voice trembled with sorrow and regret. Her pleas for forgiveness and understanding felt genuine, and I realized that in spite of all the hurt and anger I felt, I still loved her. But I was not swayed by her crying or begging, especially when I considered that she didn't extend a grace to me that she now wants for herself. My voice was cold and distant as I responded. "I heard everything, Laura, but you haven't addressed the part where you confessed to dreaming of him when you made love to me. How can you expect me to just brush that aside?" "I can't ignore that, Laura. I also can't ignore the fact that you were never going to tell me while all your friends would look at me like I was your little simp. How can I believe that you really love me when you're thinking of someone else? That is a deal breaker for me." The room fell silent. There was nothing left to say. It was clear that there was no coming back from the damage done when Laura crossed the line with Gary. No, I didn't mean that. You don't understand. I love you and I don't want him, Jeff. You have to give me a chance to explain. Don't lie to me. I never would have thought you would betray my love and cause me so much pain. If I'm wrong, then look me in the eyes and tell me it's not true. Look at me and tell me you weren't thinking of him and how he made you arrive while we made love. You can't do it, can you? Damn it, you jacked everything up. I'm going to divorce your ass so that you can go live with him instead of having to dream about him. Between sobs she said, You can't divorce me. I love you. Please give me a chance to make this right. What? For the last 3 days, I've been torn. Part of me wanted to find a way to forgive you and work things out. I thought maybe I could move past the one-time mistake, but then everything changed when I heard what you said to our friends. I felt humiliated. Those women, our friends, now see me as a dumb, clueless husband. I think I even heard Suzette call me a simp. Do you have any idea how humiliating that was? Knowing they're laughing at me and calling me clueless destroyed any self-worth I had left. She knew she had hurt me beyond comprehension. I believed that in her heart. She never wanted to hurt me, but my tears made her realize what she had done. She then felt a deep level of regret and sadness as she openly cried and tried to hold me. I pushed her away. I know I may have been a clueless dimwit in the past, but things have changed. I can't ignore what I know, and I won't be a simp, as your friends now refer to me. I will not allow myself to be treated like that by anyone again. As I finished speaking, there was a long pause, the silence heavy with the weight of our emotions. The future was uncertain, and I didn't know what lay ahead for us. But one thing was clear. I couldn't bear to live in a marriage filled with betrayal and doubt. What did you mean when you said you would let me make the decision? Well, since I couldn't decide what to do about us, I had a plan. I would tell you a story about an affair, and however you responded and acted was how I was going to move forward. In the story I just told 20 minutes ago, I never said I had an affair, only that there was an affair. I repeated what you said about how you dream of him while I give you all my love. You told me to get out of our house. You told me that you were going to destroy me in a divorce. You told me you were going to take my business and turn me into janitor. You showed no mercy. Well, that's exactly what you can expect from me now. I won't kick you out like you were going to do to me, but you will move into the guest room. I'll be meeting with the attorney and filing under adultery. I can't wait to use that new divorce law you told me about. Jeff, I didn't mean any of that. You have to believe me. Don't do this. What about our 20 years and the kids? I can't ignore what you did, Laura. You didn't think about the kids or our years together when you decided to betray me and our family. Now, get your things out of my bedroom. That night, I couldn't sleep. I know some men can forgive their wives, but I couldn't find it within myself to do so. The pain was too great, and the trust that had been broken felt irreparable. Despite my love for her, I couldn't find a way to get past what she had said. The dream of a future together was now forever broken. Before leaving I said, You've broken my heart. Today I lost someone who didn't care about me, but today you lost someone who would have done anything for you. The sounds of begging for forgiveness followed me until I walked away from Laura for the last time. The next day I made the heartbreaking call to our children. Our son Michael offered his understanding and support, but our daughter Katie was a different story altogether. She had a close relationship with her mother and was angry with me. Surprisingly, Laura took it upon herself to speak to Katie. She acknowledged her mistake and urged her not to be angry with me. The confrontation between the guys and their wives was a mess as well. Suzette was crushed after learning about Laura's divorce. Martin was seething with rage, unable to comprehend why his wife had kept the affair a secret, and even worse, why she had seemingly encouraged it. What he heard on the recording left him questioning everything. The bond they once shared seemed irreparably broken. At Scott's house, a similar scene unfolded when Emily heard the hurtful words she had spoken about her husband on the recording. The humiliation and shame were too much for Scott to bear, and he made the painful decision to leave, leaving Emily in tears and regret. Meanwhile, at Jeff and Laura's home, the tension was thick as Jeff handed Laura the divorce papers. Laura pleaded with him to forgive her, but her pleas fell on deaf ears. Judge Eva Jacobs presided over our case, and the divorce proceedings were a painful ordeal. Gary was forced to testify. He took full responsibility for what took place and offered an apology to Laura and me. The judge's ruling was swift. She granted me a significant portion of our assets and denied any spousal support under the new state statute put into place. Laura was left with the painful realization of how her actions had led to the demise of her marriage. The excitement and passion she had experienced with Gary now seemed like a distant memory. Because Jeff still loved her, he offered Laura their guest room to live in until she could get her place of her own and plan out her future. The home was large enough for them to live there without much engagement. Jeff worked harder and longer hours to keep sane and came home late enough not to see her. Laura continued to try to win Jeff back, but he had no intention of ever being with her again. He started dating Becky, his secretary, who was more than thrilled to make Jeff happy. She knew Jeff was a good catch, and even though he was 10 years her senior, she was happy with him in bed and enjoyed the massive arrivals he gave her. Jeff was a good man, and Becky couldn't believe Laura's stupidity and her luck. She would never give Jeff a reason to worry or doubt her love. The result of her actions weighed heavily on Laura. Seeing Becky move in with Jeff, occupying the space that was once theirs, was like a constant reminder of the life she had lost. Feeling alone and scared, Laura struggled to find a way to move on. With no job and few prospects, the future seemed uncertain. At Jeff's office, when the other workers found out that Gary had caused Jeff's divorce, they treated him like someone with leprosy. Nobody talked to him, and they treated him like the ass he was. He realized he couldn't stay there as they made his life miserable, screwing up jobs, causing complaints and loss of money. Gary decided to open his own business and took several accounts with him. Jeff's attorney explained that Gary was under a non-compete contract and was breaking their contract. Gary, not being educated, didn't even realize any of this and continued to grow his business. Jeff's attorney told him to be patient and wait a few months until they could present a proper case. 10 months later, Gary had amassed over 100 accounts, and his business was flourishing at an impressive pace. He felt on top of the world, basking in the success he had worked so hard to achieve. However, that success was short-lived when the attorney filed a $1.5 million lawsuit against Gary. The claim accused him of not only causing significant financial loss but also breaching the ironclad non-compete contract. As the legal battle raged on, Jeff, still nursing the wounds left by Gary's actions, was fueled by a burning desire for revenge. Money was the least of his concerns. He yearned to make Gary pay for shattering his once happy marriage and callously poaching his loyal customers. When the dust finally settled, Jeff emerged victorious, seizing ownership of Gary's once thriving business and leaving him with no choice but to file for personal bankruptcy. The dream career he had built, with the possibility of owning a piece of Jeff's company, a multi-million-dollar enterprise, crumbled before his eyes, leaving him financially broke and emotionally shattered. Scott and Martin's wives realized how close they had come to jeopardizing their marriages as Laura did. It was a wake-up call for them, and they understood the value of their husband's forgiveness and the need to respect and cherish their relationships. They decided to work on rebuilding their trust and communication to avoid such mistakes in the future. Over time, they managed to strengthen their marriages and move forward together with a newfound appreciation for their partner's love and forgiveness. They no longer socialized with Laura or Jeff and missed the good times they once shared. Laura finally accepted the fact that Jeff would never take her back. Finding a job as a receptionist at a doctor's office offered her some stability, but it couldn't fill the void left by the loss of her once happy marriage. Living in a small apartment, she felt the weight of loneliness and regret every day. Trying to move on, she met an older man from the office and began dating. But the new relationship could never compare to the love she had lost with Jeff. In her quiet moments, she would reflect on what could have been, wishing she had made different choices and held on to the life she had with Jeff. However, she had to come to terms with the reality that she had let go of something special and irreplaceable. Jeff did miss Laura, but Becky quickly filled that void and made it her mission to be the perfect other half. Jeff loved the young woman's energy and lust, and a year later they were married. Michael and Katie would have a baby half-brother a year later.